Dion, thank you so much for being here today. We've had the opportunity for you to test both our motion simulator.
I can now feel I need to brake a little bit later and carry a little bit more brake pressure through there based on what my butt's telling me.
And one of our entry-level static simulators.
Because of that feedback we're getting, I'm able to know, hey, I'm getting that oversteer. The car is at the limit here on the simulator. Very similar to how I would feel it in real life.
And getting feedback from a driver like yourself is just great for us. What did you think?
Man, this has been, first off, a blast. I really appreciate the invite to come out and drive on this.
But before we can formalize a relationship like that, we need you to test our simulators. We need to fly you to Connecticut. And just so you know in advance, we do everything we can to make simulators that are training tools for drivers that are even as good as you were, former IMSA, former Grand Am. And we want your feedback. If your feedback's negative, your input's going to improve our simulators. If your feedback's positive, the validation from you would be huge for us. We just want you to test.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate you putting up with my questions and kind of critiques over the last few weeks. I'm definitely more critical of sims than a lot of drivers. You know, I use some sims throughout my pro career, and you know, I'm really intrigued at the opportunity here because, you know, one of the biggest problems in our sport is it's really freaking hard to get reps, right? The average driver drives 4 times a year. Even that driver that drives 12, 13 times a year, they struggle with getting reps. So I like the idea of simulators to help generate more reps, but I'm really careful of quality of our platform, quality of our coaches, quality of the sessions, quality of anything, of content, anything we recommend. So I'd love to fly out there. I'd love to test it myself. If it's positive, happy to build on this relationship. But I want to make sure I'm protecting our customers, the coaches, the thousands of coaching sessions we do. If we're going to recommend something, I want to make sure that it passes my personal test so that we can do that. So super excited to fly out there, put it to the test, and have some fun with you guys.
Fully understood on where you're coming from. I would never expect you to endorse a product that you don't believe in. And part of the reason I'm so excited in getting your feedback is because this Spark Blaze relationship, it could easily result in us linking our simulator clients up with you to help improve their skills, that Blaze can actually do simulator-based coaching for our clients. All of this obviously is based on the fact that you need to like the simulators. Let's fly you to Connecticut. The dates, details, we can work that out offline. I'll shoot you a text later today and let's see what we can do.
Perfect. I'm excited.
So as we come across here the start-finish line at Virginia International Raceway, as I drive this sim, one of the things that's really clear to me is that this is a driver training tool. Not all simulators are made equal, just like not all cars are made equal here, right? And when you look at the kind of classification of what a racing simulator is, I find that term has really kind of just turned into a blanket umbrella statement that as long as it has a steering wheel and pedals, it doesn't matter if you're driving in a video game versus a simulator software versus a simulator that's got thousands of hours put into it, developing it, or it's just something off the rack anywhere. Everyone calls these things driver simulators. And I would venture to call this not as a sim, but as a driver training tool. For the amateur racer, on average, we're typically driving 5 times a year. The very kind of active amateur racer is maybe doing 15 weekends a year. Think about that in any other sport where someone's out there practicing every day or once a week. If you can just get more reps in, you have a significant advantage over anyone else that's not putting reps in. So that's really when I think about, like, is a driver training tool worth it or what's the value of it? It's really going to come down to reps, but also quality of reps. So if you're trying to get reps, but it doesn't have the physics right, it doesn't have the level of detail to really be tuned to my car, then you're realistically formalizing and reinforcing potential bad habits. One of the things that makes the Spark Virtual Racing Sim so unique is the thousands of hours that they put in really trying to train the physics of the software and how this works to match the hardware. I've driven plenty of sims before, and motion sims and static sims, and what I typically find is some really, great hardware, but when you actually start driving the car, the physics are all wrong, right? And if the physics are wrong and it doesn't feel like what you're feeling in real life, you're typically actually forming bad habits on the sim, things that work on the sim that don't work in real life. And one of the surprising things to a lot of drivers that we work with is oftentimes I get asked, like, the techniques that you're working on, like that would only apply in this type of car, that type of car, like mine's completely different, right? Well, the reality is 90% or so of the physics of how to drive a race car quickly apply in no matter what you drive. Like the fundamentals of how I would drive a spec Miata versus a prototype versus a GT car, the foundations are all really, really similar. So the thousands of hours that they put in here to developing the physics means I can go and load almost any car and drive any car, and the physics are really, really good to start off with. I can feel the load of the car, I can feel the understeer, I can feel the force feedback like I would in real life. But that last 5-10% is what creates the difference in feel and how you drive a spec Miata versus a prototype. It's not exactly the same, right? It's at 90% of it's the same. Generally, it's the same fundamentals, but the nuance difference is huge, is really, really important, right? So what they've done, and what we did a little bit in the session here, is we're driving a GT3 car here, which is really where I spent most of my career racing. And they're able to come in and custom tune that last 5-10% to make this car feel like it would feel for me in real life, right? So some of the things that we worked on was the feel of the brake pedal, the amount of pressure I need to hit the brake pedal to reach peak brake pressure, to be light on the brake pedal. So we're coming up through the S's here, and turn 10 is a very light brake application here. I need to just touch the brake pedal, release off of it, 10% brake pressure. And if you just hop on any sim without tuning it, how they compute that 10% of brake pressure and what that 10% of brake pressure feels like in the pedal could be quite a lot different car to car. Now the same thing here, we're going to approach turn 14, which is the hardest brake pressure on this racetrack. In a GT3 car, I'm putting in 15 to 1800 pounds of brake pressure here. And I've got ABS, so as I attack this brake pedal, I need to feel the vibrations in the ABS early in the brake zone. And if I hold too much brake pressure, then that ABS should start to attack a little bit more at the end of the brake zone. And they were able to sort of take what I've talked about, how the car feels, and develop that last 5 to 10%. So now what I'm driving here has actual application, actual physics to what it would feel like in real life.
I'm now in the entry-level sim here at Spark Virtual Racing. So the difference here with this sim is it's not a motion sim, it's a static simulator, meaning I'm not really moving around as we drive, but it still has those thousands of hours of logic built in, the physics of how cars work and manipulate. It also has feedback in the feet, feedback in the force feedback in the steering wheel as well, so that I can still feel the car. The level of the feedback I'm getting is lower than the driver training full $80,000 movement simulator rig that we were on earlier, but I'm still able to notice some of the nuances. Because of the rumbles I'm feeling from the Habtech system they use here, I'm able to feel almost like the same feeling I get when the rear tire, oops, as I go off the road there, but as the rear tire, when it starts to, under lots of load, slip and the sidewall of the tire starts to kind of form underneath the car, I can actually feel that in my butt. I can feel what I would feel there, the chatter of the rear tires. On a normal static sim, where you've got no feedback, I probably would have been spinning there because I'm very good at that on simulators. I'm great at going sideways and backwards, less so straight. But here I'm able to save the car. I'm able to drive and drive more consistently because of that feedback we're getting. I'm able to know, hey, I'm getting that oversteer. The car is at the limit here on the simulator. Very similar to how I would feel it in real life. So do I miss that motion? Do I miss the ability to really feel the car take a set and load? Now that I experienced it, absolutely. I wish I had that here. But in this entry-level sim, it still has the important factors that you really want to look for. The force feedback in the steering wheel, the ability to make sure the physics make sense. When I'm coaching drivers and we don't have a simulator that's really properly set up, what I've found is it's very easy for them to form bad habits. The simulator, when the physics aren't perfect, rewards different driving styles and techniques that don't have a one-to-one ratio to real life, that actually can hurt you in real life. Here, the physics, if I go to throttle too early, the car is gonna slide and understeer. If I go to throttle too aggressively, it's gonna fight me. It's gonna do what it's gonna do in real life because of those physics. So for me, the most important parts of this sim, the energy, the feedback I'm getting as a driver, that's all still there. I still get the feedback in the pedals. I still feel the rumbles here telling me that the tires are getting close to the limit. So while I miss that motion, that extra layer of fidelity and depth that the motion sim gives me, I'm still able to drive a lap without crashing, which is a miracle for me on a simulator, but then also get the feedback I need to really develop myself as a driver. I can work on how does my driving affect the balance of the race car, which is where a lot of us struggle with because we don't get enough reps. We don't get the experiment, like, if I do this, what happens next? And that's such an important part of our sport, to be able to experiment in the right environment. And this provides the right environment to experiment, to try different things as a driver, so that when I show up to the racetrack, I can remember, hey, I tried this thing, or I did this, and the car worked in this way and reacted in this way. And I know generally this is what's gonna happen now in real life. If I'm gonna come in and brake later and hold more brake pressure, that car should rotate more for me in this situation. And because of the tuning they've done, the hours and hours and hours that Joe, the engineer, has put into this, the car's reacting as it should. And I'm still not as fast as I wanna be, but I'm gonna put those hours in here, and I'm gonna go set some lap records here so that when I show up to VIR in this car next, I'm a little bit faster than I am right now, and I avoid that type of mistake as well. One of the things I absolutely love is the attention to detail on some really important factors. So as you look at this, you're probably just seeing, hey, there's a steering wheel, pedals, and a screen, just like what I've got. But to talk about the level of attention to detail here, the screen isn't just placed anywhere. If you look closely, the screen might appear to be really close to where I am, maybe even what you would think too close. But what they've done here is they've engineered the exact distance we want to place the screen away from my eyes to reenact and make it as close to real life as possible. So you notice here the level of detail that Spark puts into their sims. It gets down to not just the software and not just the physics of the race car, but also really important feedback, the visual feedback of what I'm seeing, how I'm seeing it. And that's such a big part of racing. And all of this, they'll come to your place, they'll set it up, they'll tune it, and it plugs into one wall outlet. All you need is a normal wall outlet. You hit a button and it turns on, it works. I can go out and drive. I don't need an engineer, which my wife will be very thankful for as well, and can attest to how, I need things simplified down. I need things easy for myself. I'm used to my engineers helping me do stuff. And anytime they're not there, it's a problem. So it's really simple to use, and it's got the attention to detail that's so important in a sport like ours to make sure we're avoiding those bad habits. Make sure that the time I'm putting in here, when I'm focused on it from a driver training perspective, I need things to be working correctly so that I'm training the right stuff. And I've been honestly surprised. I never really thought about not only, how do you tune the setup of the race car in the sim, but how do you tune the simulator itself? It's something that, sounds so obvious once you hear it, but until you hear it, you don't really think about it. And that's been a big unlock for me in the experience, is getting the simulator to be as close to possible of what I would normally feel. And that's where it starts to go from your fun game that you can use as maybe a mentals training tool, which is what we do with a lot of my drivers, but it turns into more of that driver training tool that we all want simulators to be, but quite frankly, normally aren't. And I'm fighting the car exactly where I'd normally fight the car. I'm missing wide of apexes exactly where I'd normally miss a wide of apexes. But notice how I'm not crashing, I'm not flying off the road. I'm able to do consistent laps, even on this entry-level sim, where normally you can't. And that's that level of attention to detail and feedback that's given me the information that I normally don't get from a simulator, the information where it's almost always just visual. Now those just extra subtle reminders and feelings that I'm getting elsewhere are really, really helping me.
Dion, thank you so much for being here today. We've had the opportunity for you to test both our motion simulator and one of our entry-level static simulators, and getting feedback from a driver like yourself is just great for us. What did you think?
Man, this has been, first off, a blast. I really appreciate the invite to come out and drive on this sim. I've been, in professional racing for, 15 years now. And I remember back the early days of simulators back in like 2008, 2007 timeframes, and getting involved in them then, and consistently driving simulators from since then. And it's always been a tool that I've found that is fun, that can help maybe a little bit mentally. But I consider myself maybe one of the harsher critics of simulators overall, right? I never really thought they were a driver training tool. But being able to come here and drive on this and see the amount of effort and tuning that you've really put into this simulator, it has turned into a driver training tool. So it's been a lot of fun for me to get back out there and experience it. And I'm fascinated to learn more on why I feel this is more of a driver training tool than any other simulator I've really been able to drive on.
That's huge for us to have you say that. We love having harsh critics sit down in the simulators, especially people who know what they're talking about. That's of course very important. You as a driver would know. But for us as a business, we hang our hat on the tuning of the simulator. So you can have great hardware and put it all together and go through the hassles of buying it, building it, and everything, and still have a simulator that's pretty useless. We refer to those simulators as track familiarity tools. You can use it ahead of time to learn where the left turns are, where the right turns are, where the straightaways are, so that you can show up at VIR and know roughly where the track goes. What we've done over the course of thousands of hours and hundreds of iterations is focus on tuning to the point where even for a driver at your quality, you feel that you can improve your driving skills and find your actual driving line. And that's a testament to my business partner, Joe Eilert. He's an aeronautical engineer by trade, and he spent time working on hydrodynamics for nuclear submarines. I understand those are just a bunch of big words.
Over my head, man. But it sounds fascinating.
The reason that I say that is because Joe's understanding of physics and his ability to take feedback from real-world drivers like yourself and then communicate that through the simulator is what takes our simulators from being a track familiarity tool to being a driver training tool, even for someone like yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I noticed that a little bit when we had the opportunity to drive it, and we started the day off and kind of MX-5 car and driving around, and then we said, hey, let's try this in the cars that I'm frankly more familiar with, right? GT3 cars to have a stiffer platform, more aerodynamics, and we switched over, and immediately right off the bat I could feel, hey, this car's pretty close, but it's not like there's some small little tweaks there, and being able to really go and actually tweak and adjust. Where does that ABS come in? How much force feedback? What am I feeling in the platform when the car rolls and takes a set? And having the opportunity to have someone take my feedback and translate that into adjusting what the sim felt like, similar to how I would talk about setup on the racetrack, was really unique. And I think it's one of those things that creates the light bulb moment for me as a driver on, wait, you can tweak the software of a sim just like we would tweak the hardware of a race car to tweak setup. And I think that was something that I've never done before. outside of those $1 million, professional rigs that we get in professional racing, which just aren't accessible for everybody else.
Exactly. And we love that light bulb moment because that's what we focus on creating for drivers. It's cool to have a simulator, but you want to have a simulator that allows you to improve your skills. And at our flagship level, like the simulator behind us, it has all the bells and whistles you can ask for. It has the full motion. It has our vibration system. It has the high-end pedals that are customizable. Our force feedback is all custom. But our goal is to have that trickle down to even more affordable models. So like the second simulator that you drove, it's completely turnkey and it has our tuning built in, which is where we differentiate ourselves from other companies, because we understand that an $80,000 simulator isn't for everyone, but for certain drivers, it's a great training tool. And then a $19,000 simulator can be a great training tool for other drivers. Our goal is for every simulator we provide to be a training tool. And for us, we'd solve two major problems. One is the fact that building your own simulator is incredibly challenging. Basically, you have to be a cross between a race engineer and a software engineer in order to even start the process. It's overwhelming. Yep. And most people are neither a race engineer nor a software engineer.
Yep.
And so it being completely turnkey, plugging into one outlet on your wall, it simplifies the process of getting access to a simulator. And then the biggest problem in the industry, I know we talk about the word tuning a lot, but the biggest problem in the industry is poorly tuned simulators, because you can have something that is completely useless other than learning track layouts.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree with that. So one of the questions I had for you is, let's say, I go out there and I want to get the simulator and I want to use it. The big rigs that we're used to in professional racing, we have like a NASA control behind us, 3, 2, 1, take off from pit lane, setting it all up. Clearly that, we don't want something like that for the everyday person. So the more advanced sim rigs, the $80,000 real driver training tools, what does the setup look like and being able to just sit in and go? What does that look like for drivers?
Part of our goal is to simplify that as much as possible. You shouldn't need to be an engineer to operate a simulator that you purchase. So our simulators across the entire lineup run off single button startup. We have software that runs in the background. It automatically initializes upon startup so that you can sit down at your simulator and start driving right away, rather than need to deal with the headaches or have an entire NASA control center like you're referring to.
I think you've worked with a few pro race car drivers before, because we're not very good at not breaking things, right? So that single button start is a very attractive feature for me. So one of the questions I had for you is the level of detail that we were able to get into in training the sim and adapting it to the car. There's a certain level of feedback that I've been able to acquire and how to communicate things over the last 15 years working with engineers, and the way that we communicate feedback about the sim was very similar. Let's say the everyday enthusiast racer maybe can't communicate things at that high of level. Can you still help them to tune the sim, or does it need someone like a pro race car driver to really tune it?
That's a really good question. It certainly doesn't require you to be at the level that you're talking about. The feedback that you gave us was incredibly detailed and pointed, which is great. That helps us improve what we do and make it more to your liking and the way you would expect the car to behave, because everybody wants their car setup to be slightly different. And everybody experiences it slightly differently, which is a big challenge, I'm sure, for race engineers around the world.
Oh yes, I've had a few want to choke me before, for sure.
For our clients that aren't as in-depth in their feedback or their detail as you are, that's perfectly fine. A lot of the time, the simulators that we install right out of the box, the tuning that goes into them and the car setup that goes into them is excellent. And what we've gotten out of it in working with you is that extra 5% in the GT3R or in the Spec Miata. What we can do with our clients upon installation is sit down, get their feedback on the simulator once they get a sense of the driving and the feel for it. And maybe they want more bite on turn-in. Maybe they want more rotation under braking. Simpler communication such as that. Those are things that we could do as well. And then, like you mentioned, we're able to remote in and make adjustments. We can remote in and work with our clients from afar to make those adjustments over time as they want the car to behave slightly differently.
Well, look, I really appreciate you having me out here and being able to drive this thing. It's been a lot of fun. I want to stress the fun element of it. It is a lot of fun, right? But it also, it's proven to me that you can get the subtle inputs of the brake release, the brake application, the things that I work on with the drivers that I'm coaching, the inputs of steering inputs, all of those subtle things that are so important, and the things that we focus on from a coaching perspective. I can feel that in the sim. I can feel how the car adapts the level of grip I need to. So it's been a lot of fun, but it's also proved to be a really great driver training tool as well.
That means the world to us. That's exactly what we were hoping to hear, and it's been great to spend the time.
come through turn 10, I know that it was really light last time on the brakes. I tried to attack harder, and again, I got that car sliding more in the brake zone. I can feel I'm getting close to the limit. You can see my hands fighting the car on early in the brake zone. As I try to apply the throttle out of here, I feel the curve. I feel the car fighting, and the car really at the edge of grip on throttle out of here. And that's given me the feedback I need to know how do I adjust my driving, right? So last time into turn 14, I wasn't able to release the brake pressure early enough. So I'm gonna brake a little bit earlier here, lighter on the brake pressure. The car's gonna slide wide there, and now I'm getting the feedback and I'm able to experiment with those last 5% of inputs like we were talking about into hog pen. So last time I was too early to throttle, the car really understeered wide, and I was about to lose it. So this lap I had to brake a little bit earlier, be a little bit more consistent with that brake pressure to get the drive out of here into turn 1. Now to get the immediate feedback on lap time, 48.7. Okay, I need to be a little bit more aggressive on the brakes here. Release off of it, car sliding, the steering wheel gets light, I'm later to throttle, fighting the car on exit there. There we go, exactly what I want. Into turn 3, I need to be much less brake pressure, so I'm not shifting as much weight to the front end, so I can be more aggressive to throttle. Last lap, into turn 4, I knew I needed to roll more entry speed through here. There we go, that's what I want to see. And you can see there, fighting the rear end, just like I would normally if I rolled too much speed through 5. Use a little bit too much road there. Going into the S's, lots of load going here in the car. So as you turn in, I can feel that load on the outside right rear tire. Coming up, car gets light as we crest the hill. Lots of load on that outside left rear. Be a little bit lighter earlier on the brakes. Car's more underneath me. Back to flat much, much earlier. Getting much higher into shift lights as we approach Oak Tree. There we go, smoother with my inputs. Back to flat much earlier, using more track, exactly what I want to see here on the back straightaway. So again, now last lap into turn 14, I released off the brakes a little bit too early, and I got a little bit too much understeer to the middle part of the corner. So my initial brake pressure was what I wanted, just a little bit free. So I'm going to continue to hit that initial brake at the same point, but I need a little bit more pressure here. Get the car a little bit more rotated. There we go. Back to throttle. See if I can hold it flat through 15. Yeah, there we go. Much better. Whoops, a little bit wide. There we go. Back to flat here right in the compression. A little bit of a short shift. Car's understeering. Back onto the front straightaway. Exactly what I want. So now you can see, based off of the feel that I'm getting, I'm experimenting with different things just like I would in real life, but now I'm not losing that precious track time. Braking past the 3 board. Can the car hold it? A little bit late of a turn-in point there. Not what I want. So a little bit too late of a brake point. I'm able to test these things and not lose that precious in-person, real-life track time. I'm able to test this, experiment with the things that I want to focus on, but in an environment where I can spend all day, which is so important. Lifting off, back to throttle. Woo! Car is starting to lose it. So you can see now the tires, I feel, are starting to wear. I'm not able to get back to full throttle as aggressively, as early as I normally would through 5. So I need to be a little bit smoother with my inputs there. It's forcing me to drive this like I would drive VIR in the middle of the day. The heat's coming up, the tires are getting warm. I have to adjust my driving to the conditions, and I can start to feel that here in my approach to driving this racetrack. So now I know, hey, next lap in turn 5, I need to be a little bit smoother with that throttle input in between 5 and 5A. I need to try to be a little bit later on the lift point, get a little bit more rotation, and then hopefully have a little bit less understeer that causes that oversteer. But I'm not crashing every time I get oversteer here. I'm able to identify it early enough, make the adjustments I need, and keep it on track. And I think I've just done 4 laps in a row without crashing, which is probably a record for me on the sim.